And thank you, Steph, for being our moderator. And thank you, everybody, for being here, especially to the newcomers. My name is Grainne, and I am a compulsive eater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet. I turn them over to a qualified gray sheet food sponsor before I eat them. And if I need to make a change for some reason outside of my control, I call a qualified sponsor. And I don't eat no matter what. I make my abstinence the most important thing in my life. And my abstinence date is coming up. When you called for anniversaries, I realized September 16th will be next month. My anniversary is September 16th, 1994. And about 15 minutes ago, when I was thinking about sharing, I was thinking, well, of course, I said yes because I'm entirely selfish and I want to keep what I have. So I will do whatever service I'm asked to do. But I am so bored with telling my story. There is nothing new for me to say except thank God for Gray Sheet abstinence, and thank God for the program, and thank God I'm abstinent. And that's really all I've got to say. But then I saw there's a bunch of newcomers here, so I can tell my story to some people who haven't heard it a million times. So I tell you what, even though every time I share, I do get I either get a little bit of a different perspective or the emphasis is on a different aspect of my recovery. Hi, Doreen. And, but mostly after 30 years, 30 plus years of telling the story, it's pretty much the same old story. Um, so I didn't know anything about compulsive eating. I didn't know anything about food addiction. I just thought that I needed to exert my willpower more to control what I ate so I could control my weight. Because what I did know I had a problem with was desperate for, I was a teenage, I was not fat when I was a kid. I thought I was fat when I was a kid. But so I always felt like I was bigger, and I always felt like the elephant amongst mice. And when I was growing up here in Ireland as a child, and I always knew I was more interested in food than anybody else. And I knew that wasn't good either, that a little girl is supposed to eat like a bird and be dainty and say no. But I always wanted to say yes and give me more. And are you going to finish that? Because if you don't, I'll finish it for you. And I knew that wasn't the way it was supposed to be. And then I was a teenager and I hit puberty and I started gaining weight and I wanted boys to find me attractive and I was desperate to be thin and I just kept gaining weight. And so I read all the books and all the diets and I read all the diets. I never actually tried a diet because I would sit in my bedroom upstairs and I would read about the diet and I would plan out the meal plan and the exercise plan and the weight loss. Never dramatic, very reasonable, 2 pounds a week. And by this date, I would be this weight. And then I would go downstairs for breakfast or lunch or dinner. And by the time my foot hit the last step, it was gone. I would walk into the kitchen and start grazing. And that's pretty much what I did. I grazed. I ate whatever was available to be eaten. I remember coming over to the United States as a kid to visit my grandparents, and they had this, beautiful glass bowl of these beautiful candies on the coffee table in their living room. And they were disgusting. I mean, they were disgusting. I hated the taste of them. I couldn't stop eating them. If it was available, if it wasn't nailed down, I was going to eat it. And so I left home when I was 21. I moved to the United States. I thought when I landed at JFK in New York, I would be a different person. I thought I would magically turn into Christy Brinkley in Baywatch, and I would be jogging on the beach in my red bikini and eating normal meals, and everything would be different. And then, here's how it started. I landed at JFK and I needed to be in Carbondale, Southern Illinois in 2 days. And I had no plan for how to get from JFK to Carbondale, Illinois. So I ended up taking a bus that zigzagged its way across the United States for 2.5 days. And I ate my way across the US. So much for Christy Brinkley and her red bathing suit. Because wherever I go, there I am. I'm a compulsive eater. Resolutions, education, nutrition information, willpower, best intentions, greatest motivations, geographics, none of them made any difference. Me and food, same relationship wherever I am, whatever is going on. And I ate my way through my 20s, but I was constantly fighting it. I was basically fighting it. If I was awake, I was fighting the urge to eat. And I'm a very strong person. I fought it. I fought the good fight. So the weight gain was gradual. It wasn't dramatic. I was restricting as much as I could. But gradually, year after year, the weight went on. And as far as I knew, that was the problem. Like if I could lose the weight, I didn't think there was a problem with food. I thought there was a problem with weight. But I found the 12-step rooms when I was 28 for another reason. And after I got sober, I realized that people were talking about compulsive eating. And so I started going to OA meetings. And wow, what a relief to find out that I'm not the only one, that it is an addiction, that there are substances to which I am sensitive physiologically, but I didn't find a solution in there. I found comfort, but I didn't find a solution. And after 2 years of working my ass off that program, like I was going to conferences and retreats and doing service and reading the literature and going to meetings every day, starting meetings. I mean, I did everything in that program, and it was just like a diet club. I was basically fighting the food the same way I had been before. I was doing it before alone, and in OA, I was doing it with other people. But I was still fighting the food. I had no relief, no peace. And I decided on a Sunday morning, I was in graduate school in Michigan in a PhD program that I made it into I don't know I can't think of the expression. I barely made it in. I only made it in because they accepted 4 people, and I was number 5, and the 4th person dropped out just before it started. So I got accepted. And this was my dream, to be in this PhD program. And so on one hand, I'm thinking, I give up. These OA meetings are stupid. I'm killing myself with the food. I'm going to get fatter and fatter and fatter. I can't stop eating. My disease is gaining power. I can feel it. The way I was dealing with food was getting worse and worse. And so on one hand, on that Sunday morning, I was thinking, I'm just going to drive my car off a bridge into the Kalamazoo River and kill myself because nothing works. And I can't live like this. This is just unbearable, just unbearable. At the same time, I'm thinking, I'm a very important graduate student in a very important PhD program. I don't have time to waste with these silly meetings that don't work. I've got to study and do research and so it was complete like insanity. On one hand, I'm going to kill myself. On the other hand, I have this fabulous life. So I was driving to this meeting, having these thoughts, driving over the bridge of the Kalamazoo River, and I have to go back and check out that Alano Club where the meeting used to be because the images are so strong in my mind. I don't know if I've imagined them this way over the years, but it was a dingy AA club in this small town in Michigan, and the OA meeting was in the basement. So I'm clumping down these threadbare stairs to this miserable meeting in the basement. We're the same cast of characters were there on a Sunday morning, having failed again to be abstinent the day before. And I knew we would all be sitting there around the table crying and saying, I tried and I failed, but I'm going to try again. And sure enough, that's what happened, except there was this woman, as I've said before, glowing away in the corner, beaming clarity, looking calm and beautiful and self-contained and like she had integrity. And I was thinking, what the hell are you doing in here? We're miserable. Get out of here. And it came to be her turn to speak, and she said the gray sheet mantra, and I knew I had found my solution because she said she had 3 years of abstinence, weighing and measuring her food from the gray sheet, committing it to a sponsor, no matter what. And I thought, oh my God, that's it. That's it. I'm going to, whatever it is, I want it. So I got started that day. And when she told me how to do what we do, she sat there with that gray sheet. The whole time I'm thinking, I can't do this. You've all heard the story and I'm running out of time. So I was thinking, I can't do this. But in my head, I'm just saying, shut up and do it. Just shut up and do it. Just shut up and do it. So I shut up for the first time in my life. So that was the first time in my life I ever really knew that I could not solve this problem on my own. And that I just kept my mouth shut and followed instructions. And here was what made all the difference. I wrote down my food, I committed it to her, and I lost 100 pounds in that instance. I felt like Atlas, who had the planet taken off his shoulders. I felt the weight of the world had been removed from me. The problem was solved. I was not responsible anymore. I just had to go to the store, get the food, put it on the scale. And that was it. After that, the desire to eat compulsively would be removed. And I floated up those dingy, dirty, grimy stairs out of that club and never went back to that meeting. And I've been doing Gray Sheet ever since, although I wasn't obviously fully convinced that I could do this, couldn't do this on my own, because twice in the following year, I made an independent food decision, plunging myself into the mental torture that I had been rescued from. And it was so horrible, the 24 hours of torture that I subjected myself to. I'm so grateful that I just threw up the white flag and told my sponsor and started the next day. And I've been abstinent since 1994. And my time is up. All I can say is those of you who are abstinent know what a relief it is. I have a normal body. Food is no longer my problem. My problem is way bigger than food. My problem is life. My problem is, how do I get along with people? How do I have the best relationships that I can with people? How do I use my skills and abilities and talents for the best? How do I be the best family member I can be? None of those are easy. And if I were face down in the food, I wouldn't have to deal with any of those. My only problem will be the size of my thighs. And are you going to finish that round Italian thing? That would be front and center in my head. I wouldn't be thinking about my mother with dementia and my sister with stress and my community that needs me. I wouldn't be thinking about any of those things. So the gratitude that I feel for GreySheeters who carry the message just knows no bounds. The fact that we're all here today so that the people who are new can hear the story of the relief from food addiction. You know, after that first day, we started a meeting in Kalamazoo, but nobody came, but we stayed abstinent. And then I moved to Houston and started a meeting, and some people are still abstinent there, but there's no meeting, but I'm still abstinent. So I do service to stay abstinent because it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Thank you all for being here in this meeting today. Thanks.